What was so special about May 17th? Nothing. Not a birthday, an anniversary, or even the day we first met. It was just a regular Tuesday. But that was the beauty of it. My name is Keith, and after 12 years of marriage, things with Lisa had gotten a bit predictable. It's not that I didn't love her. Lisa and the kids were my world. But the spark, the fire that once made her eyes light up at the mention of a romantic evening, had dimmed. So the hopeless romantic in me decided to reignite that flame. Monday morning at work, I enlisted the help of the office's expert romantics, Katie, Cheryl, and Karen, the three most attractive single women around. Ladies, I asked, if you could script the most romantic night of your life, what would it look like? Cue midnight Paris fantasies, gondola rides in Venice, and sunsets in the Swiss Alps. Whoa, easy, I laughed. I'm thinking closer to home, like a night in, or maybe at a downtown hotel, something that won't break the bank. By noon, they'd scaled their grand ideas down to my budget, and I had a plan. They were as invested in my evening as I was, nearly bouncing in their seats, warning me not to mess it up. I took Wednesday afternoon off to make sure everything was perfect. Lisa usually got home by 3:30 to greet the kids from school. So on Tuesday night, I spun a little tale. My parents want to take the kids to dinner and a show tomorrow. They'll be back by 8. The kids were thrilled at the idea of a night with Grandma and Grandpa, and when I hinted at a surprise for their mom, they were all in. Wednesday morning, I was out of the office by 11:30, my trusty list in hand. First, a trip to the store, a sweet card, her favorite chocolate, and wine. The girls' list was meticulous, down to the lighting and music. The florist eyed me curiously when I asked for 2 pounds of pink rose petals. "You must really love your wife to go through all this trouble," she remarked as I left with a grin. By 2:30, I was home, car hidden behind the house, and everything stashed in the kitchen. "Let's see," I murmured, checking my watch. "An hour to get this all done." Over the next 60 minutes, I froze the wine, arranged rose petals in a giant heart on the bed, and used chocolate pieces to write "I love you" in the center. The garden tub was filled with warm water and more rose petals. I set the wine in an ice bucket by my side of the bed and left a card on her nightstand. With the lights dimmed and the CD player ready to set the mood, I took a quick shower, shaved, and stripped down. At exactly 3:25, I heard Lisa's car pull up. I was ready, standing naked at the edge of the bed, 2 glasses of wine in hand, waiting for her to come upstairs. But instead of soft footsteps, I heard laughter. And then, like a stampede, Lisa and her boss, Rick, burst into the bedroom. 4.75 seconds. That's how long it took for my world to shatter. Her eyes met mine in a single agonizing beat of my broken heart. She stood there, blouse unbuttoned, bra half off, while Rick froze, his face draining of color. It took Lisa's brain just over a second to register what she was seeing, then another 2 for her to stammer, "Oh my God." Rick bolted, out of the room and down the stairs in less than 45 seconds. Meanwhile, Lisa crumpled, sobbing, as I stood there, a monument to a ruined evening. I poured the wine onto the bed, tossed the glasses aside, and silently began to dress, while Lisa pleaded and apologized. 5 minutes later, I was out the door. I drove to the nearest bar, Tony's, where I sat nursing my 4th pint, wondering what the hell to do next. At 6:30, I returned to the house. It was silent, Lisa's car gone. Everything in the bedroom was as I'd left it, the wine, the card, the chocolate. Only now, the room felt like a tomb. The next morning, I was a zombie, going through the motions. At the office, Karen, Katie, and Cheryl burst in, eager for details. "Judging by how you look, it must have been one hell of a night," Karen teased. "Oh, it was," I said, giving them the short version. Their faces fell as they realized what had happened. "What are you going to do?" Cheryl asked, her voice gentle. "Survive," I muttered, "and take care of my kids. But please, keep this to yourselves. I don't want to be the office joke." They promised and left, but the pity in their eyes lingered. By 9:30, I had closed our joint accounts, changed my life insurance, and scheduled a meeting with a divorce attorney. I also called my parents to let them know the kids would be staying a few more days. My phone was flooded with messages from Lisa, but I deleted them all. The lawyer laid out the grim reality. My word against hers, no solid evidence of infidelity, and a likely battle over custody, the house, and my hard-earned income. Keith, no matter what you do, you'll be paying child support for years. The best thing you can do is try to minimize your losses. Maybe try marriage counseling. I spent the afternoon moving into the spare bedroom, buying a new mattress, and throwing the old one out with a mix of bitterness and relief. Lisa finally showed up late Friday night, eyes red from crying, kids clinging to her. We barely spoke. She asked to talk, but I brushed her off. Maybe tomorrow, I said, locking the guest room door behind me. From the other side, I heard her muffled sobs as she tried to clean up the remnants of what was once our bedroom. Saturday morning, I found the card, rose petals, and chocolate in the trash. Lisa's attempts at tidying up only reminded me of the wreckage our marriage had become. I sat on the deck with my coffee, trying to figure out how the hell we got here. When Lisa finally joined me, her eyes were swollen and desperate. "You know we have to talk, Keith," she said softly. "What's there to talk about, Lisa? You brought Rick into our home, into our bed. How long has this been going on?" "It was only the second time," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Second time?" I snapped, the anger rising in me. "You've lost the right to call me sweet, Lisa. We're going to coexist for the kids, but as far as I'm concerned, you've already made your choice." The next 2 weeks were torture. At work, someone had spilled the beans, and I couldn't escape the sympathetic looks or whispers. My boss offered time off, but I declined, needing the distraction. The kids, bless them, tried to carry on as usual, but I could see the confusion in their eyes. Lisa's attempts to reconcile, even seduce, fell flat. I couldn't feel anything for her anymore. I was a man unmoored, drifting through life without direction. That is until Cheryl stormed into my office one Thursday evening. "Get your coat, we're leaving," she demanded. When I tried to argue, she cut me off. "This isn't a request, Keith. You're coming with us." At Anthony's, Katie and Karen were already waiting. Drinks were ordered, and Cheryl wasted no time tearing into me. "You've been walking around like a zombie for weeks. You're going to lose everything if you don't pull yourself together." "I have my reasons," I shot back, though my voice lacked conviction. "Reasons or excuses?" Karen challenged. "What the hell do you want, Keith? Do you want your old life back, or do you want to move forward?" "I want things to go back to the way they were," I muttered. "Do you really?" Katie asked pointedly. "Wasn't that life getting stale? Didn't you want more? Do you still love her?" "I love her," I admitted, my voice cracking. "But I also hate her. I hate Rick. I hate what they've done to me." "Then fight," Cheryl urged. "Reclaim your life, Keith. Stop letting them control your happiness." By the end of the evening, I knew they were right. I couldn't keep letting this destroy me. I needed to take action, and the first step was a visit to my lawyer. The next day, I laid out my plan. I want to sue Rick for alienation of affection, and I want to go after their company for allowing this to happen. "Keith," Randy cautioned, "you don't have concrete evidence. This could backfire." "I know, but their company won't want the bad press. I'll play the morality card. Let's see how far we can push them." Randy agreed to start the paperwork, and within days, the company was served. They wanted to settle, but I wasn't going to make it easy for them. After some back and forth, I stood firm. $250,000, attorney fees covered, and both Lisa and Rick transferred out of state. They countered with $150,000. My response? The price goes up to $300,000 if they keep haggling. By Thursday, they caved, and I signed the agreement, a check for $250,000 in hand. Feeling lighter than I had in weeks, I headed home, ready to confront Lisa. "We're going out for dinner," I announced as I walked in the door. Lisa looked at me, shocked, but a glimmer of hope flashed in her eyes. Dinner was almost like old times. We laughed, talked, and for a moment it felt like maybe, just maybe, we could fix things. But the next morning, reality came crashing down. Lisa had lost her job, transferred to a dead-end position in New Jersey, or severance with a quick exit. Rick had been shipped off to Flint, Michigan. "Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy," I smirked. "Lisa," I said, my tone serious, "if you want to stay in this family, there are conditions. First, a venereal disease test, then a polygraph." I slid a list of questions across the table. "You'll answer every one of these honestly, or we're done." She broke down, but I held firm. The next day she took the test, and though her answers weren't perfect, she passed in my eyes. But trust? That was gone. 5 months later, we're still trying to rebuild. We have sex, but it's just that. Sex. No intimacy, no connection, just a routine, like everything else. Rick's in Flint, Michigan now, while I'm here, trying to figure out if this marriage is worth saving. Last Christmas, I sent him a card from Florida. Glad you're not here. By the way, wife and kids are with me. Merry Christmas. Life goes on, but the scars remain. After that Christmas card to Rick, things didn't magically get better. If anything, it was a constant tug of war between wanting to salvage what we had and the overwhelming urge to burn it. Lisa and I continued our awkward dance around each other, pretending for the kids that everything was okay. They were too young to see the cracks, but not so young that they didn't notice something was off. I hated the lies we told them every day, the forced smiles, the everything's fine we parroted back at them when they asked why Mom and Dad didn't laugh. The truth was, I didn't know how to forgive Lisa. I'd spent so long picturing us growing old together, imagining us as the couple who had weathered every storm, that the betrayal felt like a gut punch. How do you rebuild trust when it's been shattered so thoroughly? The polygraph had given me some answers, but not the ones I wanted. I found out things I wished I hadn't. It wasn't just about Rick. There had been other moments of weakness, other men who had been just a fling or a mistake. Each revelation chipped away at the woman I thought I knew, leaving me wondering if I'd ever known her at all. I tried to get past it. For the kids, for the history we shared. But every time I looked at her, all I could see was her in that room with Rick, their betrayal staining everything we'd built together. We started counseling, though it felt more like a checklist than actual healing. The counselor encouraged us to open up, to share our feelings. But each session ended with us more distant than before, our words bouncing off the walls and echoing back to us with an emptiness we couldn't fill. The kids, bless their hearts, tried to stay positive. They clung to the hope that Mom and Dad would fix whatever was wrong, that their family wouldn't crumble like so many others they'd seen. But kids are perceptive. They noticed the nights I slept in the guest room, the silent dinners, the way Lisa and I barely touched anymore. Then, one evening in mid-January, Lisa broke down. She stood in the doorway of the guest room, her eyes red and puffy, the weight of everything finally crashing down on her. "Keith, I can't do this anymore," she whispered. Her voice was so soft, so defeated, that for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. "What can't you do, Lisa?" I asked, though I already knew. This pretending. I know I hurt you. I know I ruined everything. But I can't keep living like this, waiting for you to decide whether you hate me or not. "Do you think I enjoy this?" I snapped, the anger flaring up again. "Do you think I want to feel this way every day? You did this, Lisa. You're the one who cheated, who lied, and now you're tired of the consequences." She didn't respond, just stood there with tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, Keith. I really am. But maybe it's time we admit that this isn't working." Her words hung in the air like a death sentence. I wanted to argue, to tell her we could still fix it, but the truth was, I was tired too. Tired of pretending, of trying to rebuild something that was already in ruins. "What are you saying?" I asked, though the answer was already clear. "I'm saying maybe we should separate, give ourselves some space, some time to figure out what we really want." The thought of being apart, of not waking up to see my kids every morning, was unbearable. But the alternative, continuing to live this half-life, this charade of a marriage, was equally painful. "Where would you go?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I've been looking at apartments," she admitted. "Just something temporary, until we figure things out. It's not far, so the kids can stay with me during the week and with you on weekends." It felt like a dagger to the heart, but deep down, I knew she was right. We needed space, needed to figure out if there was anything left to salvage. "Okay," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe a break is what we need." She nodded, wiping away her tears. "I'll talk to the kids tomorrow. They deserve to hear it from both of us." The next day was one of the hardest of my life. We sat the kids down and explained as gently as we could that Mom and Dad needed some time apart, that it wasn't their fault, that we both loved them more than anything. Their tearful faces nearly broke me, and I almost called the whole thing off. But something in Lisa's eyes, a quiet resignation, told me this was the right thing to do. Over the next few weeks, Lisa moved into her apartment. The house felt emptier than ever, like a shell of what it used to be. The kids adapted as best they could, but I could see the confusion in their eyes, the sadness they tried to hide. I threw myself into work, trying to avoid the quiet of the house. Cheryl, Katie, and Karen kept checking on me, dragging me out for drinks or dinner, trying to keep me from sinking too deep into my own misery. They were good friends, better than I probably deserved, and their support was the only thing keeping me from completely falling apart. Then, one Friday night, as I was nursing a beer at Tony's, Cheryl leaned over and said something that stuck with me. "You know, Keith, you're allowed to be happy. You're allowed to move on, to find something new." "Move on," I echoed, staring into my drink. "How do I do that when everything I had is gone?" "By realizing that maybe not everything is gone," she said softly. "You've still got your kids. You've still got a life ahead of you. Maybe it's not the one you planned, but that doesn't mean it can't be good." Her words stayed with me long after I left the bar. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to stop looking back at what I'd lost and start looking forward to what I could still build. The next morning, I called Lisa. We agreed to meet at a nearby park, the kids playing on the swings while we sat on a bench, the cold January air biting at our faces. "Do you think there's a chance for us?" she asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in months. She wasn't the woman I'd married all those years ago, but neither was I the same man. We'd both changed, scarred by the choices we'd made and the pain we'd caused each other. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I think we owe it to ourselves to try. Maybe not for us, but for the kids." She nodded, a small glimmer of hope in her eyes. "I'd like that," she whispered. We agreed to start slow, to see a counselor again, to take things one day at a time. It wasn't a guarantee that we'd make it, but it was a step forward. Over the next few months, we worked on rebuilding our relationship. It wasn't easy, and there were days when I wanted to throw in the towel, when the memories of her betrayal were too much to bear. But then I'd see the kids, their smiles, their laughter, and I'd remember why I was doing this. Lisa moved back into the house that summer. It was awkward at first, like living with a stranger, but gradually we started to find our rhythm again. We'd cook dinner together, talk about our day, and even started going on dates. It wasn't the same as before, but it was something new, something that, with time, might be just as good. And then, one evening in late August, as the sun was setting and the kids were playing in the backyard, Lisa took my hand. "Thank you for giving us another chance," she said, her voice filled with emotion. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something other than anger or resentment. I felt hope. "We've still got a long way to go," I said, squeezing her hand, "but I think we can make it." She smiled, and in that moment, I believed it too. The road ahead was still uncertain, and the scars of the past would always be there. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we had a future worth fighting for. And that I realized was more than enough.